Alright, so today we are talking about the 6+1 traits of writing, which is basically just a model of analyzing writing according to 6 different traits. So we're going to walk through those, that way you know what you'll be graded on for your essay. Okay, so the first trait is called ideas, and since this is a research paper, ideas are lumped into that same category. And we're talking about the content or the strength of your arguments. So as far as your ideas are concerned, you'll be graded on your topic sentence, which we discussed will be your thesis since this is a one-paragraph essay. For example, YouTube should or should not be obligated to remove dangerous stunt videos. You'll be graded on whether or not you are clear and argumentative and whether or not you use the word should. You will also be graded on your concession statement, which is, remember, the counter-argument and the quick rebuttal, as well as on your supporting details and your main points. So for the research, you will be graded according to whether or not you reference credible sources at least 3 times, and you have to have 1 citation for each main point supporting detail combination. And you'll also be graded according to whether or not you use at least 1 paraphrase sentence and at least 1 direct quote within your paragraph. All of your reasons and details have to work together to form strong, sensible arguments. So that will be the ideas and research category on the rubric. The second trait is called organization. So for this category, you'll be graded according to whether or not your paragraph has a beginning, middle, and an end. All parts of the paragraph will have to work together cohesively from beginning to end. We'll be looking at whether or not you have mature transitional words and phrases to help your ideas flow together. So we're talking about words like along the same lines, on a similar note, what is more, furthermore, additionally, some people might argue. We are not looking for words like first, second, next, then, last. Those are very primary, and so we want you to use mature transitions to help your ideas flow. And as part of your organization too, remember your paragraph should be between 9 and 13 sentences. Okay, your third trait is called word choice. So things to consider for word choice. Who is your audience? And remember, for this paper and for most of the papers that you write for this class, your audience will be your teachers. And what is your purpose? What is your purpose for writing? In this case, it's to persuade, but down the road you might be writing to inform, or to debate, or to describe, or to narrate. So your word choice needs to be appropriate for both your audience and your purpose. Do not use slang. Do not use abbreviations, and do not use contractions because those are all too informal. For research writing, make sure that you put tired words to bed, like said and get and very. They're overused, they're tired, they're exhausted from being overused, so we need to avoid them. Think about whether or not your verbs, adjectives, and adverbs are descriptive, powerful, intriguing, age-appropriate, and inspiring. If the answer to any of those questions is no, then you need to make sure that you revise your word choice before submitting your essay. Okay, so here's a list of some tired words that you need to avoid. And then you also have over here some bad beginnings. Do not begin sentences with any of these. There, followed by a linking verb like there is, there are, there was, there were, well, and, or, so, or but. Remember, those are fanboy conjunctions that join ideas together, but they are not to be used as transitions. Whenever you start a sentence with the word this, you need to indicate what this is. So, for example, you don't just say this results in, then this is very vague, so you have to have a specific noun following this, like this problem results in blah blah blah. Okay, so the next trait is called sentence fluency. You'll be graded according to whether or not your sentences flow smoothly. Remember to avoid choppiness. It's not a side salad. And avoid stringiness. It's also not a cheese pizza. So you don't want to have a bunch of really short, choppy sentences, and you don't want to have a bunch of really long sentences. Stringy sentences are not the same as run-ons. Okay, stringy sentences are not technically run-ons. There might not be anything wrong with them, except for the fact that they're just way too long for the reader to be able to follow. So you need to shorten those up. Sentence fluency also involves whether or not you're using your commas and semicolons properly, because if you're not using your punctuation correctly, then when the reader reads your sentence out loud, it won't flow. For sentence fluency, make sure you don't include fragments, no run-ons, and no comma splices. Make sure that you vary your sentence lengths. We talked about simple sentences, compound sentences, and complex sentences, so you need to try to use all three of those. Also, vary the beginnings of your sentences. So don't start with the same word for 3 sentences in a row. Make sure that you're using transitional words, transitional phrases, dependent clauses, and a variety of techniques to begin your sentences. Above all, be concise, being short and to the point, unless you are William Shakespeare or Ernest Hemingway, which I believe you are not. Okay, a little bit more with sentence fluency, because this is an important one and people struggle with it. You want to make sure, in order to get your sentence fluency smooth, you need to read your writing out loud. So, a couple of things people do that are bad is they have missing words in their writing. You want to avoid having missing words. If you read your essay out loud, or have someone else read it out loud to you, you'll be able to catch these mistakes. So for example, students should be allowed to listen iPods in school. What's wrong with that? We're missing a word to after listen, so it's awkward. So you need to make sure that you don't have any sentences where there are words missing. An even bigger one is what we call awkward phrasings. If you see AWK written down on your paper, that means that your sentence or your phrasing is awkward. So some common examples of awkward phrasings are wordiness, repetitiveness, and dangling modifiers. So there's an example of each of those here. A wordy sentence, as far as I'm concerned, because of the fact the situation of discrimination continues in the field of medicine, women have not at the present time achieved equality with men. That's wordy. It's also an example of a stringy sentence. So that would be awkward. Another type is repetitiveness. The best teachers help each student become a better student both academically and emotionally. And you can hear the student part said twice, very close together. And then the dangling modifier. College students have a lot of pressure on them being high achievers. The being high achievers part is just stuck on at the end, and it doesn't really make sense. So all three of those are examples of awkward sentences. Okay, so here are those awkward sentences fixed. So instead of, as far as I'm concerned, blah, 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 you can see that in the second one, all of the pink underlined text has been removed, and we then have the heart of the point there, which is because of continuing discrimination in medicine, women have not yet achieved equality with men. Much shorter, more to the point, more concise, and a better argument all the way around. The second one, remember, it was bad because it was repetitive. Instead of saying the best teachers help each student to become a better student, it says the best teachers help each student to grow, both academically and emotionally. So you're saying the same thing, but you're saying it in a more efficient manner. And then the third one, remember, was bad also. It said college students have a lot of pressure on them being high achievers. The purple words there are dangling modifier. They are supposed to be describing college students, therefore they should be next to college students in the sentence, but in the bad example, they're tagged on to the end, making it awkward. So the better sentence says, being high achievers, college students have a lot of pressure on them. Okay, so as far as voice is concerned, you need to make sure that you're showing your personality. Try not to sound like an encyclopedia. When we talk about your voice in writing, we're talking about your tone. So is your tone or your voice, your personality, does it sound humorous, serious, ethical, intellectual, inquisitive, meaning that you're asking questions? So you need to pick a tone and stick with it throughout the essay. Generally, for research writing, humorous is not the best tone to pick. That's better for informal writing. Research writing needs to be formal. So you should sound confident, which means that you need to be firm. Don't use statements like, I feel students should be able to use iPods in school, because then it totally weakens your argument. You just be firm and you say, students should be able to use iPods in school. Also, for research writing, you need to sound knowledgeable. And the way that you do that is for every point you make, you back it up with credible research, which is why for each point supporting detail combination in your paper, you have to have research cited at least one time. Okay, so then the next trait is called conventions, and this is just a fancy word for needing to check for spelling errors, punctuation errors, capitalization errors, quotation mark mistakes. Make sure that you don't use any exclamation points in formal writing. One of the biggest things that people do convention-wise is they misuse a semicolon. So there's a funny cartoon over here on the side where the teacher has drawn a semicolon and then a parenthesis, thereby making a winky face, and the caption says, yes, a winky face is correct, but in ancient times, the semicolon was actually used to separate archaic written devices known as complete sentences. So we use the semicolon as a winky face so often now in our digital lives that we almost forget that a semicolon, its sole purpose is to separate two complete sentences. So that means on the first side of the sentence you have to have a complete thought, and following the semicolon you have to have a complete thought. If you have a fragment on either side, then you're misusing that semicolon. Okay, and the last trait is the +1 is called presentation. And presentation is not referring to you presenting your paper to the class. It actually refers to how your paper looks when you turn it in. So that includes, do you have it in MLA format since it's a research paper? Remember that the guidelines for this are in your class video notes. So that includes your first page formatting, the header, the heading, the title, the margins, the spacing. It includes your internal citations throughout the paper, as well as your works cited page format. So make sure also for presentation that your work is typed, not handwritten, and make sure that all of your citations throughout the paper are formatted according to MLA guidelines. And this is a big one too. If you forget to put your page number or your header, or if you find a typing error, do not handwrite anything on the printed copy. You will automatically be deducted points for presentation if you do that. Okay, so that is it for the 6+1 traits of writing. Tomorrow we'll work on those in class, so please come with any questions that you have.